Have you ever caught yourself thinking about someone and suddenly they text you? Coincidence? Maybe. But what if it isn't? What if your thoughts aren't just private whispers inside your skull, but signals that actively shape the world around you? Most people treat thinking like background noise. Harmless, invisible, meaningless. Yet every decision you've ever made, every risk you took, every opportunity you missed, started as a thought. And here's the uncomfortable question. If thoughts can change your behavior, your posture, your tone, your timing, aren't they already changing your physical reality? Today, you're going to see why your inner dialogue is not passive. It's a force, a steering wheel. And once you understand how it works, you stop being a passenger and start driving. Let's start with something simple. Imagine biting into a fresh lemon. Picture the texture, the sharp citrus smell, the juice hitting your tongue. Notice what just happened. Your mouth probably watered. Your face may have tightened, but there is no lemon. Nothing physically touched you. A thought triggered a physical reaction. That's not philosophy. That's biology. Your brain doesn't perfectly separate imagination from experience. It responds to vivid mental imagery as if it were real. Heart rate changes, hormones shift, muscles prepare. Now scale that up. If a single imagined lemon can change your body chemistry, what do years of repeated thoughts do? The stories you tell yourself daily aren't harmless commentary. They're instructions. Here's where it gets interesting. Your brain is constantly predicting reality before it happens. It builds models, expectations, scripts, and then it filters the world to match them. If you walk into a room thinking, "Nobody respects me," your posture shrinks. Your voice softens. Your eyes avoid contact. People subconsciously respond to that signal. And guess what happens? You get treated like someone who lacks confidence. Your thought didn't magically control minds. It changed your behavior, which changed their response, which confirmed your belief. Lupi, compleci. Reality altered. This is how invisible assumptions become visible outcomes, not through mysticism, but through feedback. Now, think about high performers. Athletes rehearse victories in their minds before stepping onto the field. Musicians mentally play entire performances. Surgeons visualize procedures. Why? Because mental rehearsal activates many of the same neural pathways as physical practice. The brain strengthens those circuits. Timing improves. Confidence stabilizes. Execution sharpens. When the real moment arrives, it feels familiar, expected, almost rehearsed. Their thoughts didn't replace action. They amplified it. This is a powerful pattern. Focused thinking prepares the body to behave differently, and different behavior produces different results. That's thought influencing matter through you. But there's a darker mirror to this. Negative anticipation works just as efficiently. Ever noticed how worrying about failure makes your hands shaky, your breathing shallow, your focus fragmented? The body is reacting to a threat that hasn't happened. Yet the stress response is real. Cortisol rises, muscles tense, fine motor control drops, performance suffers, and suddenly the feared outcome becomes more likely. Again, not because the universe is punishing you, but because your physiology was hijacked by expectation. The mind wrote a script, and the body performed. Here's a question most people avoid. What narrative are you rehearsing every day? Because repetition wires belief. If your internal monologue constantly says, "I'm behind," "I'm unlucky," "I always mess this up," your nervous system learns that identity. You move cautiously. You hesitate. You interpret neutral events as confirmation. Over time, that pattern solidifies into behavior, and behavior solidifies into lifestyle. This is why two people can face the same opportunity and experience completely different outcomes. Their thoughts prime their perception. Perception shapes action. Action sculpts reality. Let's talk about attention, your most underrated superpower. What you repeatedly focus on becomes psychologically louder. Your brain's filtering system prioritizes it. Suddenly you notice opportunities, patterns, and connections that were always there, but previously invisible to you. It's like buying a new car and then seeing that model everywhere. The world didn't change. Your filter did. Now, apply that intentionally. If you train your attention to look for solutions instead of obstacles, your brain begins scanning for leverage points. Conversations shift. Decisions accelerate. You start acting on possibilities you once overlooked. Thought directs attention. Attention directs behavior. Behavior reshapes circumstance. There's also a social dimension people underestimate. Humans are exquisitely sensitive to emotional cues, microexpressions, tone, timing. When your thoughts are dominated by fear, resentment, or self-doubt, those signals leak into your communication. Others respond accordingly. But when your internal state is grounded and intentional, your presence changes. You speak differently. You listen differently. People feel safer, more engaged, more willing to collaborate. Relationships improve. Doors open, not because of magic, but because your inner state influenced the social physics around you. Now consider momentum. Small, thought-driven actions compound. A single decision to think, I can improve this, leads to a small adjustment. That adjustment produces a slightly better result. That result reinforces effort. Confidence grows. More action follows. Over weeks and months, the trajectory shifts dramatically. From the outside, it looks like a breakthrough. From the inside, it's the accumulation of thought-guided micro-reality didn't change overnight. It bent gradually under consistent direction. Here's the part nobody likes to hear. Your brain defaults to survival patterns, not growth. It prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar possibility. So left unchecked, your thoughts will recycle old fears and assumptions. That's not failure, it's wiring. But awareness gives you leverage. The moment you notice a limiting thought, you create distance from it. Instead of obeying automatically, you evaluate it. Is this accurate? Is it useful? What alternative perspective would produce a better action? This is cognitive steering, and steering changes destination. Think about environments. Your thoughts influence the spaces you build. A person who believes progress is possible organizes differently, plans differently, chooses different inputs. They curate conversations, habits, and routines that support their mental model. Over time, their surroundings begin reflecting their priorities. The workspace becomes more focused. The schedule becomes more intentional. Chaos reduces. Again, thought isn't floating in abstraction. It's shaping decisions that sculpt physical context. There's also a feedback effect between identity and action. When you repeatedly think, I am someone who learns, you behave like a learner. You ask questions. You tolerate mistakes. You seek feedback. Those behaviors accelerate skill acquisition. Improvement reinforces identity. Identity stabilizes behavior. A self-sustaining loop forms. The key insight is this. Identity is largely constructed from repeated thought patterns. Change the narrative, and the behavioral architecture follows. Let's zoom out. Every invention, building, piece of art, or technology began as a thought, a mental image, a hypothesis. Someone imagined a possibility, then translated it into matter through action. Civilization itself is crystallized thought. Roads, systems, institutions, all born from human cognition. When you grasp this, the idea that thoughts influence physical reality stops sounding mystical and starts sounding obvious. Thought is the blueprint. Action is the construction. Reality is the result. But intention matters. Scattered thinking produces scattered outcomes. Focused thinking channels energy. When you deliberately choose a direction, a skill to develop, a problem to solve, a habit to build, your decisions align. Time allocation changes. Effort becomes consistent. Resistance decreases because your brain recognizes a coherent objective. Alignment reduces friction, and reduced friction accelerates progress. Here's a practical shift. Start observing your automatic thoughts like data, not commands. Notice patterns. Do they push you toward growth or freeze you in place? Replace vague negativity with precise intention. Instead of, "I'm bad at this," try, "I'm learning this step." That subtle change alters emotional response. Calm replaces panic. Curiosity replaces avoidance. Better emotional regulation leads to better execution. Execution shapes results. Consider how expectation influences perception. If you anticipate hostility, neutral interactions feel threatening. If you expect opportunity, the same interactions feel promising. Your interpretation guides your reaction. Reaction influences outcome. By adjusting expectation, you're effectively adjusting the lens through which reality is filtered. A different lens reveals different options. And let's address skepticism. None of this suggests that thinking alone overrides physics. Gravity still works. Effort still matters. But thoughts determine how you engage with those constraints. They influence persistence, creativity, timing, and resilience. In complex systems, careers, relationships, health, those variables dramatically affect outcomes. Thought is leverage. It multiplies the effectiveness of action. So here's the challenge. For the next week, treat your thoughts as prototypes for reality. When a limiting script appears, rewrite it in a way that encourages constructive behavior. Visualize the process, not just the result. Focus on the next actionable step. Watch how your posture shifts, your tone changes, your decisions sharpen. Notice the ripple effects in conversations, productivity, and mood. You're not waiting for reality to change first. You're initiating the sequence internally. The truth is simple, but not easy. Your thoughts are rehearsal, instruction, and architecture all at once. They prime your nervous system, guide your perception, shape your behavior, influence your environment. Over time, that cascade becomes your lived experience. When you consciously direct your inner dialogue, you're not escaping reality. You're actively participating in its construction. So ask yourself one final question. If your thoughts are already shaping your world every single day, why leave them on autopilot? Start choosing them with intention. Train them like tools. Aim them like vectors. Because the moment you realize your mind is not just observing reality, it is helping build it, you gain a level of agency most people never touch. And that's where real change begins.